The alley's whispers. The first slivers of dawn, thin and watery, painted the top of the grimy brick wall with a weak, grey light. Below, nestled amongst forgotten cardboard boxes and the lingering chill of the night, Lily shivered. Her thin blanket, more holes than fabric, offered little resistance against the biting air that snaked through the alley. Her stomach, a hollow drum, rumbled its familiar complaint. Another day. Another stretch of hours filled with the gnawing ache of hunger and the pervasive chill that seemed to seep into her very bones. She pushed herself up, her joints protesting with a dull ache. The alley was her world, a narrow canyon between towering buildings, perpetually cloaked in shadow and the scent of damp earth and stale refuse. From her perch, she watched the city awaken, a cacophony of distant clatter and muffled voices. She imagined the people rushing by, their faces bright, their bellies full of hot porridge and sweet tea. She pictured a steaming mug held in warm, gentle hands, not like her own, perpetually chapped and grimy. Lily closed her eyes, letting her mind drift. She conjured up a scene, a small, cozy room bathed in the glow of a crackling fire. A plump, kindly woman with laughter lines around her eyes would be stirring a pot of something rich and fragrant, its scent filling the air with promises of comfort. There would be fresh bread, still warm from the oven, and a proper bed with soft, clean sheets. A friendly face would smile at her, a genuine smile that reached their eyes, not the fleeting, pitying glances she sometimes caught from passers-by. She'd be safe, cherished, perhaps even loved. The warmth of the imaginary fire chased away the physical cold for a moment, a fleeting reprieve from her harsh reality. A sudden gust of wind, stronger than the morning's usual currents, whipped through the alley. It rustled a discarded newspaper, sending a flurry of dust and debris dancing. Something else, light and white, tumbled from above, spiraling gracefully before landing with a soft rustle near her worn boots. Lily blinked, her daydream evaporating like mist. She stared at the object, a pristine white card, edged in gold. Curiosity, a rare visitor in her usually resigned heart, tugged at her. Cautiously, she reached out a grimy finger and nudged it. The card flipped over, revealing elegant script and a delicate embossed emblem. It was an invitation. To a wedding. Her gaze traced the loops and flourishes. Mr. Alastair Thorne requests the pleasure of your company, to celebrate the marriage of Miss Elara Vance and Mr. Julian Harrington. The names meant nothing to her, but the sheer opulence of the card, its smooth, heavy paper and shimmering gold, was breathtaking. It spoke of a world utterly alien to her own, a world of grand halls, sparkling lights, and joyous celebrations. A world where people were invited, wanted, celebrated. A strange flicker ignited within her, a tiny spark of possibility in the cold, desolate alley. It was a silly thought, absurd even, but as she clutched the precious card, a whisper of hope, fragile yet persistent, began to hum in her chest. What if? A glimmer of hope. The crisp vellum of the invitation felt impossibly smooth beneath Lily's calloused fingertips. She'd found it tucked beneath a loose brick near the market's forgotten alley, a stray piece of forgotten beauty amidst the grime. Her eyes, accustomed to deciphering smudged labels and faded street signs, slowly traced the elegant script. You are cordially invited, it began, detailing a celebration of love, a union of two prominent families, set to take place at the Grand Cathedral, followed by a reception at the Duke's estate. The date was tomorrow. A knot tightened in her stomach, a mixture of envy and something else, something she couldn't quite name. She imagined the silks, the laughter, the sheer abundance of joy that would fill those hallowed halls. For a girl who knew only the chill of stone and the gnawing ache of hunger, such extravagance was a world away. Yet, an odd, insistent whisper began in her mind, a quiet urging that grew louder with each passing moment. Go. Not to participate, not to be seen, but simply to witness. To stand at the edge of something beautiful, to feel the ripple of happiness, even if it wasn't her own. It was a foolish thought, born of a desperate longing for light, but it held her captive. She knew she looked like a shadow of a person, her dress little more than patched rags, her face smudged with the dust of 1,000 forgotten days. Her hair, a tangled mess of brown, had long ago given up any pretense of order. But the whisper persisted, a stubborn glimmer in the encroaching darkness. If she could just see it, just for a moment, perhaps a piece of that joy could warm the cold corners of her existence. With a newfound determination, Lily sought out the nearest public pump, its iron handle stiff and reluctant. She worked it until a thin stream of frigid water gushed forth, washing away the layers of grime from her face and hands. The cold bit at her skin, but she welcomed the sting, a tangible sensation that promised a fleeting moment of freshness. Her tattered dress, a faded gray that had once been blue, received a similar, if less effective, treatment. She scrubbed at the worst of the stains with a small, flat stone, rubbing until her fingers ached. The fabric remained threadbare, the tears still gaping, but the effort, however futile, felt like a small act of rebellion against her circumstances. She tried to flatten her wild hair with damp hands, failing miserably, but the attempt brought a faint, unbidden smile to her lips. It was a flimsy disguise, a thin veil over stark reality, but it was all she had. And with it, a fragile spark of hope ignited within her, propelling her towards the impossible grandeur of tomorrow. Amongst the silk and laughter. The scent of roasted almonds and candied fruit hit Lily first, a delicious assault that made her stomach rumble in protest. She hesitated at the edge of the town square, a world away from the dusty path she'd just traveled. Here, banners of deep crimson and gold fluttered from every lamppost, emblazoned with a crest she didn't recognize but instinctively knew signified wealth and power. Musicians, hidden somewhere within the throng, played a lively tune on lutes and flutes, their melodies weaving through the cheerful chatter of the crowd. Lily felt like a shadow, a drab smudge against a vibrant tapestry. Women glided past in gowns of emerald, sapphire, and ruby, their silks rustling like autumn leaves in a gentle breeze. Jewels glittered at every neckline and wrist, catching the afternoon sun and scattering tiny rainbows across the cobbled streets. Men, equally resplendent, wore tunics of finely woven linen, embroidered with intricate patterns, their laughter boomed, rich and unburdened. A child, no older than herself, chased a stray pigeon, its velvet tunic shimmering with every joyous leap. Lily, in her patched dress and worn boots, felt a stark contrast, as if she were viewing a fantastical painting from a grimy window. She tried to make herself smaller, to blend into the shadows cast by an ornate fountain. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the joyful rhythm of the square. She was an uninvited guest, a ragged sparrow among peacocks, and the awareness prickled her skin. No one seemed to notice her, lost as they were in their celebratory bubble. She could just slip away, back to the anonymity of the road. The thought was tempting, a comforting whisper of retreat, but something held her rooted. A flicker of curiosity, a faint hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this grand event held a key to her own elusive future. Then, the laughter seemed to dim, the music to fade, as if the entire square had suddenly focused its gaze upon her. A tall, imposing figure in a dark uniform detached himself from a group near the central archway. His polished breastplate gleamed, and a long, heavy spear was held firmly in his gloved hand. He moved with an almost predatory grace, his boots making soft, deliberate thuds on the cobblestones. His eyes, sharp and cold, fixed on Lily. A shiver traced its way down her spine. He wore the expression of a man who had seen too much and judged often, and his gaze now spoke volumes, each silent word a command for her to disappear. Her breath hitched. He was coming for her. The guard's steps grew louder, closer, each one a stark declaration of her unwelcome presence. He didn't hurry, but there was an inevitability to his approach that made her limbs stiffen. She could feel the stares of a few nearby revelers, curious at the sudden shift in the guard's attention. Their smiles had faltered, replaced by expressions of mild disapproval. Lily swallowed, her mouth suddenly dry. She knew what was coming. The shame of being publicly dismissed, sent away like a stray dog. The guard's shadow. The scent of crushed rose petals, sweet and cloying, hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the damp earth Lily was accustomed to. She had crept as close as she dared, the edge of the manicured lawn her boundary, a ragged silhouette against the backdrop of silk and lace. The sound of a firm cough made her jump, her heart leaping into her throat. A figure, tall and broad, stepped from the shadows cast by a towering oak, his uniform a crisp, dark blue, silver buttons gleaming in the dappled sunlight. He was one of the estate guards, a formidable presence whose stern gaze seemed to sweep away any stray thought of impropriety. His eyes, the color of flint, narrowed on Lily's small, still form. "All right, girl, you know the rules," he rumbled, his voice low but carrying an undeniable authority. "No loitering. This is a private event." He gestured with a dismissive flick of his wrist, indicating the direction away from the festivities, back towards the winding lane that led out of the estate. Lily's breath hitched. A tremor ran through her, a familiar urge to flee, to vanish into the undergrowth as she had done countless times before. But something held her rooted. The music, a delicate string ensemble, drifted towards her, and the sight of the elaborate floral arch, adorned with white lilies and trailing ivy, was too captivating to abandon. She had never seen such beauty, not up close. She swallowed, the dryness in her throat making her voice a reedy whisper. "Please, sir. I won't bother anyone. I just want to watch. From here. I promise." Her gaze, usually downcast, lifted to meet his, a flicker of raw earnestness in their depths. She tucked her hands, grimy and calloused, behind her back, trying to appear less like a nuisance and more like a silent, harmless observer. The guard's expression remained unyielding. He took a step closer, his shadow falling over her, enveloping her in a sudden coolness. "Watch what? A wedding? You don't belong here. Go on now, before I have to escort you." His tone was firm, but there was a subtle shift, a hint of something less aggressive than before. Perhaps the quiet determination in her eyes had registered. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Lily said, her voice gaining a touch more strength, though still soft. She wasn't begging, not exactly. She was stating a simple, undeniable truth. "I won't make a sound. I just want to see it happen." She truly did. The idea of witnessing such a grand event, even from the periphery, filled her with an unexpected sense of wonder. The guard paused, his sharp eyes scanning her patched dress, her dusty boots, then returning to her face. He seemed to weigh her words, her quiet plea, against the strictures of his duty. The distant laughter of guests, light and carefree, punctuated the silence between them. After a long moment, he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of countless minor transgressions he'd had to overlook. "All right," he said, the word a reluctant concession. "But you stay right there. Don't move an inch. And if anyone asks, you're invisible. Understand?" His voice was still gruff, but the hardness had softened around the edges. He didn't wait for her reply, simply turned and walked back towards the oak, melting into its shadows once more. Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. A tiny spark of triumph, warm and unexpected, bloomed in her chest. She watched the guards retreating back, then turned her attention back to the vibrant spectacle unfolding before her, a silent witness to a world so far removed from her own. His shadow, though no longer directly upon her, still felt like a watchful presence, a silent guardian of her allowed intrusion. A bride's grace and a groom's patience. A hush fell over the cobblestone square as the first notes of the processional swelled, a melody both grand and tender, carried on the soft morning breeze. Then, the double doors of the old church swung inward, revealing Sarah. She moved with an innate elegance, her gown a whisper of ivory silk that seemed to float around her as she began her walk. Her auburn hair, gathered in a loose, intricate braid, caught the sunlight filtering through the ancient oak leaves, illuminating the delicate floral pins woven within. Her gaze, warm and steady, swept across the gathered faces, a subtle, reassuring smile gracing her lips, radiating a calm joy that permeated the air. Thomas, standing at the makeshift altar beneath a canopy of white roses, watched her approach. His usual composed demeanor softened, a genuine, unguarded smile spreading across his face, his eyes alight with an emotion that was a potent mix of adoration and profound gratitude. He had waited for this moment, had envisioned it countless times, but the reality surpassed any dream. He saw not just a beautiful woman, but the kind heart, the steadfast spirit, and the unwavering grace that had drawn him to her from their very first meeting. A subtle tremor ran through him, a feeling of absolute rightness settling deep in his chest. Lily, perched on a rough-hewn bench at the edge of the square, her small, mended dress feeling oddly out of place amidst the finery, watched Sarah with wide, unblinking eyes. She had never seen anything so beautiful. The bride's every step seemed to carry a silent blessing, her presence filling the sunlit square with a warmth that chased away the lingering chill of her own hard life. Lily felt a strange, unfamiliar flutter in her own chest, a tiny spark of hope igniting within her. The joyous music, a vibrant symphony of strings and woodwinds, seemed to wrap around her, momentarily eclipsing the gnawing worry that often accompanied her. The air buzzed with an infectious happiness, a collective sigh of contentment rising from the guests as Sarah drew closer, her eyes now fixed solely on Thomas. As Sarah reached Thomas, he extended his hand, his touch gentle as he helped her up the small step. Their eyes met, a silent conversation passing between them, a shared history of trials overcome and a future brimming with promise. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them, bathed in the golden light of a perfect morning, ready to embark on their journey. The music swelled once more, a crescendo of pure, unadulterated joy, marking the beginning of their new life together. The fallen petal. A hush had fallen over the grand hall as Sarah, radiant in ivory lace, began her slow, deliberate walk down the aisle. Her bouquet, a cascade of white roses and delicate lilies of the valley, trembled slightly in her gloved hands. Thomas, standing tall and resolute at the altar, watched her approach, a gentle smile softening his usually serious expression. The air, thick with the scent of lilies and beeswax, felt charged with anticipation. Suddenly, a playful gust of wind, seemingly from nowhere, swept through the open stained-glass windows. It rustled the heavy velvet drapes and sent a shiver through the flickering candlelight. For a fleeting moment, the delicate petals of Sarah's bouquet danced in the breeze. One solitary lily, a perfect bell of purest white, detached itself from the arrangement. It spiraled gracefully, a miniature aerial ballet, before drifting down, past the rows of impeccably dressed guests. It landed, with an almost imperceptible whisper, directly at Lily's feet. The tiny blossom lay stark against the worn, dust-caked leather of her shoes, a poignant contrast of purity and hardship. Lily, who had been trying to shrink further into the carved pew, her patched dress feeling like a beacon of shame, froze. Her wide, observant eyes, usually downcast, fixed on the fallen petal. It was so perfect, so impossibly white, a fleeting moment of beauty in her otherwise stark existence. A strange warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. Without a second thought, driven by an instinct she couldn't name, Lily bent down. Her fingers, small and grimy, carefully picked up the lily. Its stem was cool and smooth against her skin. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Guests, who had been turning to follow Sarah's progress, now subtly shifted their gazes towards the small, ragged girl at the back. Then, to the collective astonishment of everyone present, Lily began to walk. Her steps were tentative at first, then gained a surprising resolve. She moved past the rows of silk and polished shoes, her gaze fixed not on the faces of the stunned guests, but on Sarah, who was now only a few steps from the altar. The little flower, held so carefully in her hand, seemed to guide her. A wave of murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd, a low hum of disbelief and curiosity. Thomas, whose eyes had been solely on Sarah, now saw the small figure approaching, clutching the white bloom. Sarah, too, registered the unexpected movement, her brow furrowing slightly in surprise, her walk momentarily faltering. Lily, oblivious to the stir she was causing, just kept walking, a tiny, determined envoy of a fallen petal. A glimpse of the past. A hush fell over the assembled guests, thick and suffocating, as Lily began her slow, deliberate walk down the aisle. Whispers, sharp as splinters, broke the silence. "Is that, a beggar?" a woman near the front gasped, fanning herself with a gloved hand. Another snickered, "Perhaps she's confused, this isn't a charity kitchen." Lily's tattered dress, a patchwork of faded blues and grays, seemed to glow under the grand chandeliers, an unwelcome beacon of poverty amidst the silk and lace. Her bare feet, calloused and smudged with dust, made almost no sound on the polished marble floor, yet their presence was deafening. Every eye, every judgment, felt like a physical weight pressing down on her small frame, but she kept her gaze fixed on Thomas, an anchor in the swirling sea of disdain. Thomas, standing tall and resolute at the altar, felt the collective shock ripple through the room. His parents, rigid with indignation in the front pew, cast furious glances his way. He braced himself for a surge of anger, a frustrated reprimand for this brazen intrusion, but it never came. Instead, as Lily drew nearer, a different sensation began to bloom in his chest, not irritation, but a strange, insistent curiosity. Her eyes, wide and earnest, held a familiar depth, a quiet strength that belied her ragged appearance. He found himself studying her, not as an unwelcome guest, but as an enigma he felt compelled to solve. She was almost upon him when a glint of silver caught his eye, peeking from the frayed neckline of her dress. A small, oval locket, tarnished with age but undeniably present, swung gently with each hesitant step. His breath hitched. It was a simple piece, unadorned, but its distinct shape, its particular shade of aged silver, struck a chord deep within him. A forgotten memory, like a half-submerged stone, began to surface from the murky depths of his past. He felt a prickle behind his eyes, a sudden, inexplicable ache. He knew that locket. He had seen it before, countless times, clutched in a tiny hand, worn around a slender neck. His sister. His little sister. The one he believed lost to the unforgiving streets years ago. The world outside the chapel, the disapproving gazes, the imminent scandal, all of it faded, replaced by the ghost of a child's laughter and the sharp, undeniable image of that locket. His gaze snapped from the silver pendant to Lily's face, his heart hammering with a sudden, wild hope. Could it be? After all these years? The truth revealed. The last echoes of clinking cutlery had softened to a gentle hush as the final guests departed, leaving the grand dining room in a quiet embrace. Lily, still clad in her threadbare dress, remained at the expansive table, a small silver locket held fast in her hand. The delicate engraving of a blooming rose, nearly smooth from countless touches and the passage of time, caught the lamplight with a faint gleam. Thomas, his usual composure now touched by an unfamiliar tremor, approached her. Sarah, ever vigilant, positioned herself slightly behind him, her gaze unwavering yet tender. "Lily," Thomas began, his voice surprisingly soft, "might I inquire about that lovely locket?" Lily's eyes, wide and a touch wary, lifted to meet his. She nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around the cool metal. The plush velvet of the dining chair felt foreign beneath her, she yearned for the familiar comfort of her small, shared cot, yet an innate sense of the moment's gravity held her captive. It's very old, isn't it?" he continued, his gaze fixed on the antique piece rather than her face. "Where did you unearth such a treasure?" A faint blush warmed Lily's cheeks. She typically recoiled from inquiries about her past, a history more shadowed than sunlit. Yet Thomas's tone was so kind, devoid of the usual pity or suspicion she so often encountered. "It was my mother's," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the sporadic crackle of the dying hearth fire. "All I truly have left of her." "And Papa?" Thomas's breath hitched. Sarah's hand instinctively flew to her mouth. He knelt then, bringing himself to Lily's eye level, his gaze intense, probing. "Your mother's," he repeated, his voice raspy. Did she ever speak of its origin? Where it came from?" Lily shook her head, a lone tear tracing a path down her cheek. "No. Not much. Only that it was hers, and before that, her mother's." It was rescued from the fire. The only thing they found after everything was gone. The last words were nearly lost in a burgeoning sob. The room seemed to constrict, the air growing dense with unvoiced memories. Thomas's hand, usually so steady, trembled as he reached out, not to touch Lily, but to indicate the locket. "The fire?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to his earlier booming presence at the wedding. "What fire, Lily?" She looked at him, her tear-filled eyes wide and innocent. "The one that took our home. Years ago. Papa said it took everything. My brother, too. He was just a baby." A profound silence descended, broken only by Thomas's ragged intake of breath. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Long scattered pieces suddenly clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The locket, the rose engraving, the fire, the lost baby brother. It was too precise, too devastatingly familiar. His own family's tragedy, the gaping wound that had never truly healed, now had a name, a face, a living, breathing echo in the small girl before him. A wave of emotion, hot and overwhelming, washed over him. His vision blurred. He felt Sarah's hand on his shoulder, a silent anchor in the maelstrom. He looked at Lily again, truly saw her, her quiet strength, her deep-set eyes so like his mother's, the graceful curve of her jaw. It wasn't just hope now, it was certainty, a profound, undeniable truth that resonated in every fiber of his being. His long-lost sister. She was here. She was real. A family reborn. The murmur of conversation, previously a gentle hum, had died into an astonished silence. All eyes were fixed on the slight figure in the tattered dress, now enveloped in Thomas's strong embrace. Tears, hot and unbidden, streamed down Thomas's face, tracing paths through the faint stubble on his cheeks. He held Lily as if she were the most precious, fragile thing in the world, his grip tight, almost desperate, as if fearing she might vanish again. Lily, initially stiff with shock, slowly melted into the warmth, her small hands clutching the lapels of his coat. A faint, unfamiliar scent of lavender and starched linen, so different from the stale air of the orphanage, filled her senses. It was the scent of safety. He pulled back, just enough to look at her, his eyes red-rimmed but shining with an incandescent joy. "Lily," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion, a sound that brought a fresh wave of tears to his eyes. He then turned, still holding her hand, to face the assembled guests. The grand ballroom, moments before filled with the joyful clamor of a wedding, now felt unnaturally quiet, the clinking of silverware and the hushed whispers entirely absent. Every gaze, from the curious to the judgmental, was fixed upon them. Sarah, who had watched the unfolding scene with a mixture of bewilderment and profound understanding, stepped closer, her hand gently resting on Thomas's arm. Her presence was a silent anchor, a testament to her unwavering support. Thomas cleared his throat, his voice still shaky but gaining strength with each word. "Friends, family," he began, his gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, "I know this is unexpected." A nervous cough rippled through the back rows, quickly stifled. "Many years ago, I lost my sister. We were separated, too young to truly understand what was happening." His grip on Lily's hand tightened, a silent promise. "For years, I believed she was gone, a phantom of my childhood memories." His voice cracked slightly, but he pressed on, his eyes unwavering as they found his mother's, then his father's, who were both looking at Lily with a dawning recognition. "Today," Thomas announced, his voice ringing with a conviction that silenced any remaining murmurs, "my sister has come home." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. "This is Lily. My sister, Lily." A collective gasp swept through the room. Lily, usually so adept at fading into the background, felt the overwhelming weight of all those eyes, yet she didn't shrink. Standing beside Thomas, she felt a peculiar surge of courage, an unfamiliar warmth blossoming in her chest. No longer an orphan, no longer an outcast, she was Thomas's sister. She was family. The grand chandeliers twinkled overhead, casting a golden glow on the scene, illuminating the transformation in her life. The ragged dress still clung to her frame, but it no longer defined her. In that moment, surrounded by the opulent trappings of wealth and the shocked faces of strangers, Lily found not just a brother, but a home, a name, and a future intertwined with Thomas and Sarah. The wedding, it seemed, had not just united two souls, but had unexpectedly, miraculously, reborn a family.